Well, in my response to that question, obviously, I am not the Minister of Labor and Productivity. So whatever I'm going to say right now is going to be more hypothetical, and it's really a scenario. And that is really from my own strategic thinking perspective. Well, if I am appointed to take that role, one of the first things that I will do would be to carry out a national audit on the level of unemployment in the country over the past 10 years. Why is that the case? Because if you're to plan effectively, you need to have data, statistics, which would help you to effectively draw out a sustainable plan of action. This information will let us understand whether it's been on the increase or the decline. If it has been on the increase, then we'll need to find out the reason why this has been the case. Now, what you would also find from statistical study is that in particular areas, you might have a higher growth in comparison to other areas. And year in, year out, there might be variations. So the figures that you will get from possibly Adamawa State in terms of the number of unemployed youths might go down in that following year, whilst in Kano, which the year prior to that might be somewhat lower, but this time higher. So these are the variations that we'll look at very closely, and we need to study and understand the factors that has contributed to either the upward growth or the downward spiral. With that kind of information, we'll have a team, and my team, I must say, would likely be technocrats. I personally, would not work with people who do not have experience in this particular area. So it's going to be more of a laboratory experimental process rather than guesstimation, where people will just guess and, because they feel that these are issues that government is not so concerned about, even though it's been, aired on the news and all that in terms of expression of concern. But they would believe that when it comes to the crunch of it, it's not really, a serious issue. Because if it would be a serious issue, something should have been done over the past 10 years. And there must be a difference in that respect. And with all this information put together, we will then now create a working group who will now more than likely work with both the presidency and the private sector. I can tell you that our private sector in Nigeria equally today are largely dependent on government for support. Whichever way you want to look at it, whether it's in the manufacturing or even in the energy sector, whichever sector, the federal government is the biggest client. And that really shouldn't be the case. In as long as the federal government is the biggest client for the business community in Nigeria, what you'll find is that such patronage would always lead into that mono economy where diversification would be somewhat restricted. But where you have a situation that people are innovative, creative, and resourceful, get into whether it's in agriculture, they can, from the mainstream agriculture, move into allied sectors of agriculture and work more with the market force rather than depending on government largesse, learning to be able to create wealth, understanding the rudiments of wealth creation. That will be one of the main positions that I will take, working towards ensuring that the people are independent of totally dependent on government support. But what government will be recommended to do at the offset of this whole exercise is to provide the necessary resources and infrastructure that would aid the group who are being groomed into an enterprise or some form of self-employment scheme. What you find is that within a period of 5 years, those that we would have been able to support from the length and breadth of the country, from Abia all the way to Zamfara, they equally, based on this experiment, because we will work it on an experimental basis, they would be expected to be in a position to also start to create employment. They would now become employers of the work within the labor market. That is one of the steps that one will take. In the same vein, we would partner with all the local government in the country. I sense that for the first time, we will take a position where every local government would have a unit of labor and productivity, and their role, which would be by virtue of them being empowered to actually carry out, again, a very clinical exercise in being able to get the people in their local government to register, particularly those who are not in employment, to register, and we will then be able to assess exactly how we can help in supporting, them vis-a-vis work identification and job opportunities. So what you will have would be like your job centers within or employment offices within the local government, structure. We would actually take on an office within the local government. We will work with the local government, but our mandate would be, the mandate for the officers would be directly from the federal government. So take, again, back to all the states. Every single local government within the entire length and breadth of Nigeria would have a core team who are mandated by the Federal Ministry of Labor and Productivity. And their role simply would be to work with the local group in being able to assist them in identifying job opportunities. Yes, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in the service sector, whatever sector, it would all have been tabulated. So it will be based on your skills, based on your strength, that will be able to support you. And I would equally say that it would not be restricted to that. The team would also work with employment agencies. So there will be a very strong and finite strategy to ensure that the process of getting people back into employment is streamless.